What if the hero you saw fall was the flame that reignites the fight for an entire empire? Years after witnessing the death of Maximus and seeing the glory of Rome turn to ashes, Lucius, a young prince, is forced to fight for his life in the Colosseum. With his heart consumed by rage and the weight of a corrupt empire on his shoulders, he searches the past for the strength and honor to restore the Rome of his dreams. In Numidia, around the year 200 AD, life was peaceful in the village. There, we meet Hanno, a farmer devoted to his crops and chickens, and his wife, Erishat, who took care of the household chores. Both lived in great happiness, until the peace is abruptly shattered by an alarm on the city walls. The lit pyres signal a bad omen, indicating that the threat is approaching the town. Hanno and Erishat, far from being simple peasants, reveal themselves to be experienced Numidian warriors, and together they prepare for combat. They don their battle gear and wield their weapons. In the fortress, the city is already in readiness. Jugurtha, the king of Numidia, blesses each combatant, praying for victory and the defense of his home. Then, the chief approaches Hanno on the walls. When asked about the lack of an offering to the gods, the warrior surprises his mentor, stating that he would prefer to offer the body of an enemy to the entities he believes in. Shortly after, Hanno and Erishat meet again and exchange their rings, swearing loyalty and inseparable union, no matter the fate. With the enemy approaching, Hanno assumes the posture of a Numidian general, ordering his allies to fight with ferocity to annihilate their adversaries. Finally, Hanno shouts his motto to the soldiers, "Where death is, we will be, where we are, death will not be." At the same time, enemy warships approach the Numidian coast. It is the powerful Roman fleet, which had already conquered all of Africa except this region. At their head, General Acacius commands, giving orders to his subordinates to steer the ships with precision. Several slaves row to propel the Roman vessels, and the invaders are extremely prepared for the confrontation with the Numidians. The war finally begins. The Africans use catapults to launch flaming projectiles at the Romans, huge vessels filled with burning fabrics. These improvised weapons are effective against the Roman ships. Both sides exchange arrows and all sorts of artillery. As they approach the fortress, Acacius orders his men to prepare the bridge to invade the territory. The problem is that the Numids give the Romans no respite, and the platform gets stuck, forcing the general himself to intervene. At that moment, the invading soldiers finally manage to access the enemy fortress, and the battle begins. The fight is extremely bloody, with Romans and Numids brutally annihilating each other. Acacius, skilled, leads his allies against the enemies, who quickly spread across the battlefield. Despite significant losses, the Romans fight tirelessly until the general realizes that the biggest obstacle is the African archers. On the other hand, Hanno has been observing Acacius' movements since the beginning, but the confusion of the war prevents him from going to the enemy leader, causing the young man to face and defeat several Roman soldiers without much difficulty, demonstrating Numidia's ability to defend its territory. At a certain point, Hanno searches for Erishat, only to witness Acacius ordering his men to eliminate her. The skilled warrior is hit by an arrow in the abdomen and falls on the seashore. Hanno is shocked to see his beloved being killed, and this distraction is the perfect opening for a Roman to strike him. However, the Numidian wakes up sometime later in the afterlife. There, he sees Erishat being carried by two figures in black cloaks, in a boat ready to transport her. She tells her husband that she will wait for him on the other side. Shortly thereafter, the prisoners are marked as servants of the Roman Empire and taken to one of the ships. There, Hanno meets Jugurtha again, who is suffering from an open fracture in his arm. Upon seeing him, Hanno improvises a splint for his mentor, who makes it clear that his time is approaching. After all, the Romans will commit atrocities and enslave them, and the Numidian knows he cannot bear it. Jugurtha also remembers when he met Hanno, an innocent child lost in the desert. Asking his friend to hold on a little longer, Jugurtha reveals that, when he passes to the afterlife, he will find his ancestors. The former king questions what awaits him, making Hanno remember his childhood, when the Roman army invaded cities and towns in search of them. Each time they failed, they attacked the people they encountered. After some time, they arrive at the port of Ostia, located in Rome. The slaves are taken to the arena for public entertainment. In the small Colosseum, they meet Maximus, who is preparing to select the best men. Once there, Jugurtha and Hanno form a duo for the show, which will force them to face extremely angry primates. To make matters worse, they cannot use anything to defend themselves, and the servants of the arena use darts to make the beasts even more aggressive, making them attack everything in front of them. Jugurtha, unfortunately, is killed by one of the primates that jumps on his neck and devours his jugular. Driven not only by the rage of losing his friend, but also by his survival instincts, Hanno faces one of the animals. Intending to scare him, Hanno shows no fear. On the contrary, he mirrors the primate's movements and attitudes, who hesitates to attack him, realizing that Hanno is not easy prey. In this way, they face each other on equal terms. The warrior even bites the primate, immediately arousing Macrinus' interest, as Hanno was not only brave, but also the most skilled among the slaves. Using his chains to strangle the primate, Hanno manages to defeat him. After the fight, the surviving slaves are evaluated by Vigo, Macrinus' right-hand man. Upon seeing Hanno, Vigo does not hide his interest in what he calls the monkey eater, and Macrinus orders him to test him in a one-on-one fight. Vigo offers Hanno 2 gloves, but before he can prepare himself, Vigo hits him with a punch. The fight begins, and even at a disadvantage, the slave manages to counterattack the opponent's blows, who does not underestimate him even with his spiked gauntlets. Hanno takes time to knock Vigo down, and before he can defeat him, Macrinus interrupts the fight and orders Vigo to take the boy to his office. There, Macrinus reveals himself to be an illustrious scout and gladiator salesman. However, unlike others, he does not seek charisma or brute strength in men, but rather an uncontrollable rage, something he sees in Hanno's eyes. Aiming to profit greatly from the boy's fights, Macrinus questions his desire, and the Numid reveals that his wish is to take the heads of every Roman soldier. This will be a practically impossible wish to fulfill, but Macrinus reveals that Hanno can have the head of General Acacius, if he wishes, but to do so, he must fight bravely as his gladiator in Great Rome. After the conversation, the prisoners gather to eat, and the others begin to mock the Numid for what he did to the primate. However, this does not lead to a fight, but rather the beginning of a rapport. In parallel, we discover that the empire was taken over by the emperors Geta and Caracalla. Rome plunged into an era of corruption and darkness, where the people practically hate the Senate and the emperors. This fact becomes clear when General Acacius is met with a protest from the citizens. The emperor brothers, Geta and Caracalla, obviously celebrate the army commander for his conquests in Africa, to the point of presenting him with a ceremony in his honor. But the problem begins when Acacius asks for a break from war. The two tyrants refuse and make it clear that Rome's next step is Persia and India, so the general will not have the rest he so desired. Even against his will, Acacius ends up bowing his head to his emperors, agreeing to march to Asia. After many hours, the general goes to the residence of Lucilla, his wife. The soldier makes it clear to his beloved that he can no longer stand the tyrants in power and, therefore, guarantees that he will only fight again if he can remove them from command. Hearing this, Lucilla questions whether his men would be loyal if Acacius decides to rebel. The next day, Macrinus arrives in Rome with his slaves, especially Hanno, who is taken by Vigo to prepare. At the same time, Macrinus meets with Senator Thraex, an old acquaintance involved in all types of entertainment and gambling in the empire. The two soon go to a luxurious party hosted by the emperors, where a banquet is served, and the menu even includes the head of a rhinoceros. As they talk, the old man asks if Macrinus is interested in the Roman Senate, which he denies, since at the moment his objective is betting on gladiator fights. The senator then reveals his champion, who will face Hanno in a presentation fight for Caracalla and Geta. The gladiator, visibly older and more experienced than the young man, ignores Hanno's attempts at peace, as he does not want to spill blood to entertain Rome. The problem is that the man does not care and attacks Hanno, who is forced to face him. At the beginning of the fight, the Numid avoids attacking in a lethal manner until the old man shows that he does not intend to spare him or accept an alliance. Thus, the young man is forced to defeat him mercilessly. Everyone at the party is shocked by the blood spilled, but they are also happy to see this fight between the two warriors. Geta, excited, tries to talk to Hanno, who ignores the emperor and, instead of answering, begins to recite a poem by Virgil. Fortunately, Macrinus calms the situation of his gladiator, who is simply provoking one of the emperors of Rome. At that moment, the brothers thank him for the battle and decide that Hanno will fight in the Colosseum soon. After the fight, Macrinus goes to meet the boy and gives him 2 gold coins for the victory. However, he questions how a supposed African knows a poem like that. Hanno reveals that he learned it from a Roman soldier captured in Numidia. It turns out that the warrior is smart and refuses to reveal his origins to Macrinus. After all, he is nothing more than a gladiator who is only good for use in the arena. In other words, it doesn't matter where he came from. This makes Macrinus suspicious, but he stands up and warns that if Hanno continues to win, he may soon face Cassius. The next day, Hanno and his fellow slaves are taken to Rome for the opening of the Colosseum Games. On the way, everyone continues to mock the Numidian for the bite he gave the monkey, until one of the men notices the statue of a she-wolf nursing 2 children. Finding her strange, Hanno explains that the wolf nursed and raised Romulus and Remus like animals. This arouses curiosity in the other men, who find it strange that an African knows so much about Roman culture. He changes the subject, saying that he is only aware of the destruction they cause wherever they go, and also reveals that the grandeur of the empire is nothing because, in fact, everything there is rotten and corrupt. This becomes increasingly obvious as along the way the slaves' cart comes across dozens of needy peasants begging for food. However, their journey is interrupted when Maximus goes to meet Senator Thrax, who, upon seeing him, is shocked. After all, he has not yet paid the bet he lost at the emperor's party. The owner of the Gladiators reveals the politician's debt and, already knowing that the man is an addict, proposes that they double the bet. Then, the group finally arrives at the Gladiators' quarters, and everyone there is excited to see fresh meat in the arena. However, Hanno pays no attention to the others, as his attention is on the list of all the gladiators who fought in the Colosseum, especially Maximus and Commodus. With the gladiators ready to fight, it is announced that these games are in honor of the victory of the Roman Empire against Numidia, and the host has the people applaud the emperors. Finally, the last person to be honored is the hero of Rome, Cassius, who gives a speech at the behest of Caracalla and Geta, telling the people that bravery is what the empire needs most, a clear hint to his brothers. When the gladiators are placed in the arena, their opponent is announced, the champion of the Colosseum, the warrior Lucius, riding a rhinoceros, proof that Rome is very fair in the battles of the Colosseum. Before attacking, Hanno recommends that everyone run to the sides when the animal advances. They even follow the Numidian strategy, except for one of them, who is the first to be defeated when facing the enemy head-on. Hanno takes responsibility, and his preparation for the fight is to pick up some sand from the floor of the Colosseum, just as Maximus did in his time. He throws the grains into the air and waits for the rhino to advance. His idea of blinding the animal works, making it crash straight into the wall, but it does not come out unscathed. At that moment, Hanno and Glissio face off. The two confront each other, and the champion of the Colosseum manages to disarm the Numida quickly, cheering up the emperors, who remember the poem recited by the warrior that day. Since they do not remember off the top of their heads, Lucilla gets up and completes the rest, making her more aware of Hanno's identity, who manages to resume the fight in an even manner until he is knocked down again by Glissio, leaving the people to decide his fate. Geta observes that Rome wants to spare the barbarian, and asks Lucilla what to do, and the woman asks to have mercy on the Numida, who gets up again and refuses to accept mercy from the emperors. When Geta prepares to kill him, Hanno disarms him and counterattacks, plunging the blade into his abdomen, becoming the winner of the fight and of the first game in the Colosseum. The gladiator, not satisfied, knocks down his opponent and eliminates him once and for all. With the end of the fight, Hanno leaves the arena and shows his companions that fighting there is not the path to freedom. With that, he goes to the infirmary and meets Ravi, who treats the warriors, as most die from infection in their wounds. Maximus arrives, happy with the spectacle that the Numida put on in the arena, and makes it clear that he still expects much more from Hanno as a gladiator. After this meeting, Maximus goes to meet Lucilla. There, she shows that she knows the reputation of the gladiator seller, and he reveals that in the past he served alongside her father in his campaigns against Africa. Lucilla gets straight to the point and asks Maximus where he gets his warriors. The man replies that they are usually prisoners of war or beggars. Of course, Lucilla's curiosity leaves Maximus with a flea in his ear. Until time passes, and he goes to meet Questor, who reveals something about Lucilla's past. The daughter of the former emperor of Rome had a son with Lucius Verus. However, rumors indicated that he did not like women, which made most believe that Lucilla's child was from one of his lovers or even from his brother Commodus. It turns out that, since the day Maximus defeated his brother, no one has seen Lucilla's boy again, who today would be between 20 and 30 years old. So, Maximus begins to suspect Lucilla's true intentions. At the same time, Lucilla reads the poem recited by Hanno, and its similarity to her former love reminds her of Maximus. Lucilla remembers the day she was forced to send her son, Lucius, away, precisely because he was the heir to the empire and therefore his life could be threatened. After these memories, she asks for protection from her father's statue in a sanctuary and then starts a secret meeting with Senators Gracchus and Thrax, who question the reason for this meeting. Acacius immediately reveals that their objective is to remove Caracalla and Geta from power on the last day of the Colosseum Games so that they can reclaim the Rome of Dreams, desired by Marcus Aurelius in the past, causing the empire to end and power to be handed over to the Senate. At first, Gracchus is reluctant, as they tried to do this years ago and failed, but the senator trusts Lucilla and allies himself with the two. Thraex also promises to help Lucilla take what is rightfully hers. Thus, the meeting comes to an end, and Gracchus takes Lucilla to the cell where Hanno is imprisoned. Right away, she asks if he knows her, and since he just ignores her, she insists on asking if he has a family or something like that, causing him to answer that his wife, Erishat, was killed by the legion led by Acacius. Upon hearing him, Lucilla tries to justify herself regarding what she did in the past, but Hanno clearly does not care about her excuses and refuses to accept her as his mother, because, according to him, Lucius, the past no longer exists, and she will not find her former son. Knowing that she cannot give her love to Hanno, Lucilla states that he must have the strength of his father, who is actually Maximus. But these words make him even more furious, to the point of expelling her from there. The next day, the gladiators begin training, and Vigo shows that he doesn't like Numida very much, forcing him to practice rowing alone for hours. When the boy becomes exhausted, Ravi appears to help him. Hanno asks if the doctor is free and why he doesn't return home, to which Ravi responds that he has found a family now and, after so many years, his life is in Rome and no longer in his homeland. Knowing his friend's story, Hanno comments that, when he was a child, his grandfather told him stories about the Rome of Dreams, where it would be governed by the Senate and free from corruption or injustice. Ravi states that this is a risky ideal. After all, everything is moving towards making this dream impossible to achieve. Now, we see that the Roman Empire is recreating the Battle of Salamis, marked by the confrontation between the Trojans and the Persians. The inexplicable is happening because the Colosseum has been filled with water and sharks, meaning that the fight between the gladiators and the enemy will be at sea. Unfortunately for Hanno's men, the soldiers have bows and arrows. Seeing the crisis, the gladiator devises a strategy for his allies to row against the Romans, with the aim of destroying the enemy ship's oars. Then, Hanno has his boat surround them to run over the side of the Roman boat. In this way, the gladiators jump against the soldiers, and all those who fall into the water are devoured by the sharks, who are attracted to blood. In the confusion, Hanno finds a crossbow and aims to hit Acacius. However, the turbulence of the ship makes him miss, and this attempt to kill the general causes the emperors to interrupt the entire game in the Colosseum. When the men return to their prison, everyone is happy about the victory. Vigo appears to charge them with the person responsible for the crossbow shot, but unfortunately, the complicity between the gladiators does not allow them to hand over the culprit, even though it is obvious that it was Hanno who tried to kill the general. Afterwards, Ravi continues treating his friend's wounds, who comments on his dream involving the river. Even though this symbolizes the passage to the afterlife, Hanno is not afraid. After all, Erishat is waiting for him on the other side. For the doctor, the waters are the opposite, signifying life and evolution. Hanno then looks at the names of the gladiators marked on the wall, which leads him to tell his memories of Maximus, the most honorable warrior in the history of that Colosseum. Ravi's generation was later than that of the ancient Roman general, but even so, all the gladiators spoke about Maximus in his time. The former fighter takes his friend to a shrine made especially for Hanno's predecessor. There are his sword and breastplate, which now belong to Numida. Meanwhile, Thraex meets with Lucilla's maid, who reveals some of her secrets to the senator, who obviously intends to betray Marcus Aurelius' daughter. Sometime later, Macrinas goes to Thraex's house to collect the debt the senator owes him. It turns out that he is not there just for the money, as Macrinas wants information that the senator has. The gambler reveals that Lucilla, Acacius, and the Senate intend to remove Caracalla and Geta from power, in addition to wanting to save one of the gladiators from the Colosseum, which makes Macrinas understand their plan immediately. At dusk, Lucilla is captured by the Empire's soldiers. At the same time, Acacius and his most loyal men try to invade the Colosseum to rescue the person they need. The problem is that several soldiers catch them in a trap in which only the general survives. The two end up being taken to the Emperor's palace. Caracalla loses control and tries to kill them. Geta manages to remain calm and control his brother, because their desire is for both of them to be eliminated in public. Before making this decision, Macrinas advises one of the brothers not to punish Acacius in that way, since the man is practically a hero in Rome, and crucifixion is the punishment for thieves and criminals. To avoid a popular revolt, the best decision is to let the gods decide his fate. The next day, Acacius is taken to fight for his life and honor, and the warrior defeats his executioners without any problems. The one the general wanted to rescue appears, being Hanno himself, who, blinded by rage, attacks the enemy without thinking twice. Acacius defends himself without attacking him, precisely because he wants to talk to the Numida. He knows that the boy is Lucius, Lucilla's son, and refuses to face him or kill him for that reason. The problem is that Hanno doesn't care and continues trying to finish off his old enemy, who manages to gain the upper hand against the Numida. Acacius finally surrenders and refuses to fight, making it clear that he loves Lucilla and that he would have given his life for Maximus when he served by her side. These words touch Hanno, causing him to surrender and kneel in front of the Roman general. Unfortunately for both of them, Geta doesn't care and orders his archers to mercilessly kill Acacius with dozens of arrows right in front of Hanno. The gladiator sees the absurdity and shows the people that if the emperors do not value the life of an illustrious general and hero, they certainly despise the Roman population even more. These words make the people revolt and feel betrayed by their own emperors. Thus, Maximus even suggests that they leave the Colosseum for safety. It turns out that the gladiator seller deviates from his path and goes to Hanno, where he questions why his gladiator spared Acacius' life when he had the chance to exact his revenge, and this makes it even more obvious to Maximus that his favorite has the noble heart of a Roman. Maximus believes that his destiny is to take Rome for himself, and Hanno will be his perfect instrument in this goal. The gladiator denies it and states that he will never serve him in this way. Next, Maximus goes to the emperors, who are still desperate about the situation of the empire due to the angry people outside the palace. Caracalla's outburst makes Geta insult his own brother and his monkey Dondos. When he gets up to leave, the emperor comments that his brother's illness has reached his brain and is making him more and more crazy with each passing day. Knowing this, Maximus goes to Caracalla not to console him, but to manipulate him. Maximus lies about Geta wanting to blame his brother for the situation of the empire and thus hand it over to the people and the Senate. To make matters worse, the emperor's advisor also claims that not only will Caracalla suffer, but his little monkey Dondos will also suffer. These lies make the emperor freak out and go to his brother with a dagger. Seeing this, Geta tries to stop him, an attempt that fails, as Maximus appears to help Caracalla eliminate the other emperor once and for all. The next day, the current emperor gives Dondos powers to govern the civilians and the army of Rome, and logically all the senators think this is absurd, until Caracalla reveals that the second in command, after the little monkey, is Maximus. Just then the crazy emperor comes out announcing the continuation of the games in the Colosseum and that there will be mass deaths to celebrate the new era of Rome. Maximus shows the Senate the head of Geta, announcing that he can control the revolting population through the strength of the soldiers and his firm hand, but first he needs the support of the Senate, and all the senators return to his favor. Soon after, Maximus goes to Lucilla's prison, where he says that her father's dream of creating the Rome of dreams is nothing more than a fiction, and that now he will make the empire fall so that he can later build it in his image. In addition, Maximus reveals a mark left on his chest, showing that he not only served Emperor Marcus Aurelius, but was also a gladiator like Hanno and Maximus. Finally, the current ruler of Rome makes it clear that Lucilla has only a few hours left, who takes advantage of this to go to her son Hanno to show him a ring that belonged to his father, Maximus, and finally, to Acacius. Like the three, the boy fights in the name of the empire, and for this reason, she gives the jewel to the gladiator. Numida comments that he knows about the idea of killing Lucilla in the Colosseum and states that he does not intend to lose her now that he has found her again. Before leaving him, Lucilla states that Acacius had a plan to activate General Darius and his men in Ostia to begin the invasion against Caracalla and Geta. Hearing this, Hanno asks Ravi for a favor, informing him that the doctor must go to the port and call on the soldiers loyal to Rome to begin marching towards the empire. As an idea to make them trust his warning, the gladiator orders his friend to show Acacius' ring to Darius, who will surely recognize the jewel and set the plan in motion. In addition to this information, the Numidian orders his companion to inform him that the one summoning the soldiers is Lucius, the Prince of Rome. Upon receiving the mission, the former warrior arrives at Ostia and shows Darius the ring, making it clear that the one summoning the army forces is Lucius Verus Aurelius himself. Now, under the command of Caracalla, who continues to be manipulated by Maximus, Lucilla is taken to the Colosseum to be killed alongside all the others who conspired alongside him. Maximus knows that her trial could cause a popular revolt, so his plan is to deliver the head of the other emperor to the people. In other words, he has set up his entire strategy to come to power in parallel. Vigo goes to Hanno and informs him that he will be released if he wins his last fight in the Colosseum. Unfortunately for Vigo, the cells are open, allowing Hanno to knock him down and attack him using the wooden sword that was promised to him. Alongside the gladiators, Hanno intends to join Acacius' army to overthrow Caracalla and Macrinas. Next, we see that the gladiator, now going by the name of Lucius, arms himself with his father's breastplate and blade to be the only one to defend his own mother from several soldiers. Then, he surprises Macrinas by ordering all the warriors to help him in the fight. Of course, the fight is bloody, and the people are agitated when they see the rebellion led by the barbarian. To Macrinas' surprise, the general of the Roman army informs him that Acacius' soldiers are approaching. Knowing this, Macrinas orders the cavalry to kill Lucius and his allies. Before taking action, the gladiator salesman makes sure to eliminate Caracalla once and for all and then shoots an arrow at Lucilla just as her son is about to rescue her. As he does so, Macrinas rides to the entrance of Rome and is pursued by Lucius. On one side, there are the Praetorians who fight for the empire, on the other, Darius' men, who support the Roman prince. At this point, Macrinas says that the gods want him to rebuild the empire once and for all, something that Maximus' son will not allow, thus starting a fight between the two. The fight is evenly matched, however. Macrinas plays dirty and throws ashes in Lucius' eyes, who falls into a small river and begins to be drowned by the enemy. The man tries to stab him and fails because of the breastplate that the boy inherited from his father. But when he is about to drown once and for all, the gladiator listens to his mother's words and throws a stone at Macrinas' face. Now, Lucius turns the tables and rips off the enemy's hand and then eliminates him once and for all, thus retaking the power of the empire. Seeing both armies, Maximus' son remembers the Rome of dreams that his predecessors dreamed of so much in the past, and, asking for the support of those men to achieve this goal, they all swear loyalty to the boy. In the end, Lucius Verus Aurelius returns to the Colosseum, and as he kneels to pick up some sand in his hands, the gladiator asks his father for wisdom so that he can make the best decisions. If you enjoyed this journey of revenge and redemption, don't forget to leave a like. It really helps the channel to continue bringing incredible stories like this. Take advantage and subscribe so you don't miss any new videos. And tell me in the comments, do you think Lucius will be able to restore the glory of Rome to its people? Thank you very much for watching this far. And until next time,